It starts with our idol-loving protagonist attending a concert. While filming a fan cam, he got interviewed and made a joke that caused a misunderstanding that he is a pedophile. 3 years later, Jinkyung got diagnosed with social anxiety and panic disorder and became an anime addict instead. Just then, he notices a mosquito, and he picks up a bug spray can. He acts like he is casting magic and kills the mosquito. Just then, a flash of light appears, and he disappears. He finds himself falling from the sky and lands in a field where a girl exclaims that she succeeded in summoning. The girl bows to Jinkyung and asks for his name. Confused, he mentions that he is a YouTuber, but the girl mishears it as YouTuber. The girl asks Jinkyung to kill the ginormous monster behind him that resembles a moth. Jinkyung got confused and wondered how he was going to kill it. He thinks everything that is happening is just a dream because he is not getting panic attacks while talking to the girl. He trusts that this is just a fantasy world in his dream, and he recites magic he knows from anime and uses the bug spray. But it looks like nothing is happening, and the girl feels embarrassed for him. Just then, the giant mosquito explodes into pieces. The girl gets surprised, while Jinkyung breaks into a cold sweat. This is the first time she has come across such a strong spell, and as an apprentice, she is not supposed to summon such a strong summon. She thanks Jinkyung and asks if he is a wizard, to which he just agrees. She introduces herself as Maina, an apprentice summoner, and asks if she can summon him again. Jinkyung mishears her name as Maina, triggering his trauma. Jinkyung exclaims that he will call her Ai-chan instead. Jinkyung claims he can't dream the same thing again, so he might not meet her again. Maina got sad, and she thinks she was just lucky this one time to summon someone powerful. Maina smiles and casts a spell to send Jinkyung back, but he notices something on the spell's last part. Just then, he is back in his room. He noticed the Made in Japan phrase from the spell and thinks it was really a dream. But he noticed how tired he was despite sleeping. He goes back to sleep, and when he wakes up, he notices leaves on his feet. Meanwhile, his parents are in the living room. His mother worries that Jinkyung didn't eat, and his father goes out to smoke and calls Jinkyung trash. Jinkyung tries to avoid his parents because he knows how they will react. He notices his computer is on, and he reboots it, but he suddenly disappears. He sees himself falling again from the skies. Meanwhile, Maina meets with Jake and Alira. Maina reports that their village is swarmed with demons. Jake wonders how Maina got to them so fast, knowing that there was a giant moth on the way. She claims that it just disappeared. They hear a sound, and Jake explains that the Fallen are coming. The Fallen are humans punished by the mountain's master by branding because of their greed and damage to the mountains. Just then, Maina asks what happens if a summon causes damage in the mountains. Jake explains that the mountain's master will send the Fallen to bring the summoner in. A nervous Maina confesses that she used a summon to defeat the giant moth and destroy a few mountains. Alira laughs because they know Maina can't summon a spirit as an apprentice. Just then, a fallen figure appears in front of them. Alira summons a djinn and attacks the Fallen. Jake suggests running away, but a lot of Fallen appear and crush the djinn. They run away, and the Fallen chase them. Maina got separated from the others, and the Fallen branded her. The Fallen leave, and Maina blames Jinkyung. She unconsciously asked for him again and casts a summoning spell. When she thought that it didn't work, something fell from the sky. Surrounded by the Fallen, Jinkyung appears. Jinkyung is confused about what is happening. He realizes that it is not a dream after all. Maina screams for help, and Jinkyung notices the Fallen surrounding her. Jinkyung thinks it through and concludes that he is super strong in this world. He laughs, ready to fight the Fallen, but they just turn around while dragging Maina. Jinkyung runs to catch up with them. He worries that he didn't bring bug spray. He notices Maina's forehead, and she explains what is happening. He tries to remove it with sand and by smacking it, but nothing is happening. Jinkyung spits on it, and the brand fades away. The Fallen suddenly turn around, and one attacks them. Jinkyung spits on it, and it died. He laughs at how effective his spit was, and the rest of the Fallen disappear. Meanwhile, Jake and Alira are under attack by the Fallen, but they also disappear. Just then, a strong rumbling happens, and the mountain's master appears. It roars and attacks Jinkyung and Maina. Jinkyung lies down on the ground and thinks that it is now hopeless. He remembers having the bug spray before. Just then, he realizes that he's got a wireless mouse with him. He stands up and makes Maina promise him a favor if he kills the colossus. Maina feels the moronic feeling again, and Jinkyung starts chanting random magic and removes the battery from his mouse. He throws the wireless mouse, but nothing happens. The colossus tries to attack them again, but he realizes it won't work without the battery. Just then, a magic attack comes out of the battery. It hits the colossus, and a lightning field surrounds it. The repetitive lightning strikes kill the mountain's master, and it crumbles. Maina exclaims that Jinkyung killed the colossus. She thanks him and asks what was in Jinkyung's favor. Because it came out of nowhere, he'll tell her next time. Maina is happy that she'll meet him again next time. Maina gives him an A tag. It serves as a link between the summoned spirit and the summoner. Jinkyung returns to his room and fully realizes that everything was real. He wants to brag about it to someone and did it online, but the commenters treat him as a joke. Furious, he uses his bug spray, but of course, nothing will work on Earth. He notices that the can is empty after barely using it. The mouse battery is also depleted. He concludes that it is because he used it in the other world. Meanwhile, Maina returns to their camp and discovers Alera's servant, Benny. They both look for Alera and Jake. Maina says that she defeated the colossus with her summon, but Benny doesn't believe her. Jinkyung, on the other hand, watches an anime series that made him cry and throw away his current anime figure. With his mother's credit card, he searches online for his new favorite character's figure and discovers a special bikini edition. He gets furious at the makers for showing her skin, but he sees a specific comment that made him buy it. Jinkyung's mother got notified that Jinkyung bought something. She wonders what Jinkyung is doing. Jinkyung finishes rewatching an anime series and wonders how Maina is doing. Suddenly his order comes, but because of his social anxiety, he asks the delivery man to leave the package by the door. He dramatically opens the door, and he sees his neighbor. The neighbor watches him embarrassingly go back inside. Meanwhile, Maina and Benny catch up to Alera. Alera and Maina leave Benny behind. Alera introduces Maina to her uncle, the Earl of the territory. He invites her to stay and work. She bathes and eats. She also got new clothes and thinks the Lord is kind. But it seems like there is labor in exchange. She notices others cleaning. Maina finds out that she is wearing a servant's uniform. Meanwhile, Jinkyung reverses course at the side of the figure he ordered. He is also prepared in case he is summoned. In the dining area, his mother tells Jinkyung's father that Jinkyung picked up a delivery on his own. He comments on it, and they finish their meal. He then checks something on his computer. Meanwhile, the Earl saw Maina's efforts and tasked him with cultivating the land and harvesting produce as a farmer. It seems like she needs to work and pay for her food, water, and clothes. She was left alone and tries to move around, but she realizes that it's over for her. Just then, another delivery arrives, ordered by either of his parents. He asks the delivery man to leave it, and he checks this time for his neighbors before going out. The woman sees the parcel and recalls what happened yesterday. She laughs at Jinkyung's creepy and strange behavior. Jinkyung recalls his traumatic experiences and falls unconscious. Later, Jinkyung's father arrives and sees his ordered parcel. Jinkyung's mother informs him that she discovers Jinkyung unconscious in front of the door. He tries to ignore it, but Jinkyung's mother asks him not to overwhelm Jinkyung. Meanwhile, Maina realizes that she is now both a servant and a farmer. She returns to the land assigned to her and discovers demons ruining her fields. She then tries to summon a djinn, but it is so small, like an ant, and immediately disappears. She grabs her hoe and attacks the demons, driving them away. Back at the Earl's mansion, Jake returns with Ronin, a wizard sent by the king. Ronin reports about the demons' attacks and their destination. The king ordered an expedition, and Ronin came to ask for the best summoner. Alera offers assistance. Meanwhile, Maina is surprised to see her seedlings growing quickly. The small demons return, and she grabs her hoe to drive them away. Just then, the monster's mother appears. It screeches at the same time, the Adag shines and Jinkyung regains energy and teleports to the other world. Maina gets excited, but she sees Jinkyung falling from the skies in an embarrassing pose. Moreover, he lands with weird sounds, making Maina more embarrassed. Jinkyung announces his arrival and sees the monster and Maina cowering. He thought she was attacked. He brings out a lighter and chants a spell, but the monster rushes toward him. Just then, the lighter shines red. Jinkyung rotates his body and slashes the monster's neck. The lighter was transformed into a flame sword. He announces his skill and slices the monster in half. Jinkyung realizes that he feels more at ease in this world. Main got impressed but got mad because her field was also destroyed. Still, she thanks him, and Jinkyung just notices that Maina is wearing an authentic maid's uniform in a fantasy world. The baby demons cry, and Jinkyung laughs like a villain. Just then, the demon's father arrives. It screeches and calls out more bird demons. He moves forward, but the lighter is out of fuel. He looks for more items, and a mosquito coil box drops. He lights up the mosquito coil, and he remembers seeing it somewhere. The demon attacks Jinkyung, but he burns it and activates a terror field, just like the one in Neon Genesis. The flame expands and kills the horde of demon birds, spreading throughout the land. The demons are erased, and Maina asks what happened. Jinkyung explains that he built the ultimate barrier. The barrier will be gone once the mosquito coil burns out. Jinkyung asks her why a summoner is farming. He offers to take her home. On their way, Maina is amazed that Jinkyung can stay so long in her world. He claims that he is not an ordinary spirit. Maina tells him how she is disheartened to continue as a summoner, and Jinkyung gives her a piece of word advice. He then remembers the favor he asked for before. He asks her to wear his new favorite anime character's micro bikini. Jinkyung covers his eyes while anticipating Maina, but it looks like he got sent back to Earth, while Maina apologizes from the other side. After a few days, Jinkyung shouts in frustration at not seeing Maina in a micro bikini. His mother notices how energetic he is. Meanwhile, Maina goes home after farming and Benny joins him. Benny mentions how they are treated as livestock. They are provided with necessities even if they do not have freedom. He mentions how Maina is a summoner and has a chance to become a noble, but Maina claims she doesn't have the talent. Meanwhile, Ronin asks Alira where is the summoner that she promised. She panics and tells him to wait. She regrets not bringing her classmates with her and considers sending any summoner she can think of. Just then, Maina and Benny arrive, and Alira glares at Maina. She then tells her to go away. Meanwhile, Jinkyung is watching a dramatic scene in his favorite anime and realizes why Maina didn't wear the micro bikini for him. Maina felt chills, and she tried to wear them, but decided to burn them instead. She went outside and noticed Ronin practicing his magic. Maina greets him and Ronin introduces himself. She is amazed to see magic in a wizard. Ronin shows her another type of magic, and she is amazed by it because it looks like fireflies. Ronin explains that this magic is a wide-range meteor spell that can blow away a few mountains. He also shares that he is the best and highest-ranked wizard. He then explains how magic works in a simple way by using mana and imagination. Summoned spirits can use the mana from their world to invoke magic. She then realizes how Jinkyung uses his abilities. Just then, they notice a bird in the night sky, and it attacks the Earl's mansion. The Earl's mansion bursts into flames, and he and Alira escape. The Earl screams and orders everyone to put out the fire, but the servants shout for freedom and run away. Jake assumes that it is a demon attack. Just then, a blue light approaches them at high speed. Jake tries to attack it by throwing his sword, but it is useless. They dodge the blue light, and Alira plans to fight back. She chants and summons the ruler of tempests. She asks it to fight the demon, and it easily smacks the demon away. Alira hopes it is over because she can't manage to keep the summon for too long, but the demon still got up. It looks slower this time, and just then, Maina and Ronin arrive. Maina asks if the spirit is hers, but Alira denies it. Ronin recognizes the blue light as Gria's guide. The demon exploded, and Ronin explains that a demon had wiped out a stronghold before. The others dismiss his words, but Ronin claims that it was just the guide who died. Just then, a colossal demon appears named Gria of the Wandering Blade. The demon flies out of the portal. It lets out a fiery breath that destroys forests and mountains. The Earl's mansion got destroyed along with the fields around it. Everyone runs away, but Gria notices them. Gria unleashes a fiery breath in their direction, and Maina gets hit. When she thought she was dead, she noticed the micro bikini shielding her from the attack. She feels conflicted though. Alira and Jake ask how Maina obtained such a powerful artifact, and she claims that she got it from a spirit she summoned. Meanwhile, Jinkyung can't sleep thinking about Maina wearing the micro bikini. He grabs an energy drink and sleeps, but just then, he gets summoned to the other world. Alira looks at him with doubt. Gria keeps attacking random areas in the mountains. Alira wonders why a powerful demon appears in their place, and Ronin claims that Gria appears whenever there is a threat to the demons. Everyone looks at Alira, and she gets mad. She asks Maina to do something about her spirit. Maina wakes Jinkyung, and he sees new faces. Jinkyung widens his eyes, seeing Alira. Sorry, it was the Earl in a micro bikini that he saw. He cries and slurs at the Earl. Maina claims that they use the defensive power to protect the Earl, but Jinkyung exclaims that it only works on girls and asks to get rid of the hideous beast in front of him. Jake takes away the crying Earl, and Maina cries because her life is now ruined. Maina tries to ask Jinkyung for help, but he looks dead while crying. Maina apologizes to Alira and claims that she should fight instead because she is the best summoner. Ronin flinches, and Alira gets mad. Ronin criticizes Alira for hiding the fact that she is the best summoner. Alira claims she can't go fight in the north because she is a noble running a land. She criticizes them as peasants who didn't protect the north properly and didn't have talents in summoning. She calls everyone useless, and Maina apologizes for being talentless and a burden. Alira condemns Maina even more. Jinkyung interferes and asks what Maina is doing. Jinkyung gulps down the energy he brought over and exclaims that Maina is not talentless because she summoned him. She asks why Maina is kneeling in front of a selfish brat. She scolds her and tells her that she should show some dignity and never bow to anyone again. He gags, and a bright light comes out of his mouth. Jinkyung propels upward and releases a bright light. Gria notices him and attacks with a fiery breath. Jinkyung receives that attack but throws it back to Gria. Gria dodges, and the ball of fire explodes in the night sky. Ronin and Alira are shocked to see a weird spirit. An overactive Jinkyung then attacks Gria, but the demon flies higher. Jinkyung pursues him, and Gria tries to attack him, but Jinkyung dodges all of Gria's attacks. Feeling threatened, Gria opens its scales and fires off multiple shots at Jinkyung. Jinkyung dodges everything and approaches Gria's eyes. Jinkyung gets near and lightly punches Gria's eyes. Gria's body starts rumbling, and its colossal body explodes in the night sky. Jinkyung lightly falls from the sky, and Maina tries to wake him up, but Jinkyung is just sleeping while mumbling. Ronin exclaims that Jinkyung is the world's savior, even though he looks creepy. Even though he is an embarrassment, Maina knows Jinkyung is special. Ronin kneels and begs Maina to help them in the north with her overwhelming power. Maina is surprised that it was not her power but Jinkyung's. Ronin claims that she summoned the strongest spirit, meaning she is the best summoner around. He reminds her of Jinkyung's words about having dignity. Maina says she is not sure if she can do it, but she'll go and help them. Maina thanks Jinkyung for giving her courage. At another time, Jinkyung realizes that going outside is nothing compared to fighting huge monsters. He finally gets the courage to go outside and greet the janitor. Just then, the janitor turns into the Earl, and Jinkyung wakes up from the nightmare. Maina greets her, and Jinkyung doesn't remember much after drinking the energy drink. He recalls getting overwhelming power, and Maina tells him that he was sleeping for 2 days. He swears not to drink it again. Maina plans to undo the summons, but Jinkyung asks to go out first. He looks over the scenery, and he is amazed by it. He asks how the boat is flying, and Ronin appears to introduce himself and explain that the airship is using mana. Jinkyung thought the mana in this world was gone, but Ronin explains that there is still some circulating the atmosphere, enough to invoke certain spells. However, the ship is equipped with an item created by alchemists called Shulkin, which is constantly absorbing mana from the atmosphere and storing extra mana. Maina looks to the side and observes Benny. In a flashback, Alira tells him to join Maina and that he might have a chance to change his status from slave to commoner. Hours later, they arrived at the king's castle, and Jinkyung was amazed to see a castle floating in the sky. They ride an elevator after docking the ship. Ronin explains that the king built the castle in the sky to avoid demon attacks. Maina realizes that the castle is the cause of the depleting mana in the world. Ronin warns her not to say her opinion in the castle. They arrive at the throne room, and the king greets them. Jinkyung stares blankly, and the king asks who he is. Ronin explains that Jinkyung is his summoned spirit. Duke Kalunik, Alira's father, arrives and confirms that Alira sent them out. Jinkyung continues staring at them, and he calls out to the king. They were surprised, and Jinkyung applauds that the king passed his test. Everyone awkwardly laughs and claps, and the king gets flustered. The woman next to the king says that Jinkyung is just impressed. He asks them when they are leaving for the north. After that, the dukes had a secret conversation about tricking and replacing the king. Jinkyung, Maina, and Benny set out toward the north with no money and no guards. Benny calls the king an idiot and mentions that the nobles are planning something. Maina warns him and asks Jinkyung what to do next. Jinkyung thinks it is the perfect setup to overthrow the playboy king. A hooded woman appears while laughing and tries to talk to Maina. Jinkyung claims that she can't fool him, based on his experience of watching too much anime. He knows that the hooded person is the red-haired woman next to the king. She kneels and apologizes. She hands over some things given by the king. Later, the king was surprised that Jinkyung saw through everything, including the political issues and his act of being a fool. Ronin adds further that Jinkyung has been summoned for several days already and was able to single-handedly destroy the undefeated Gria. The king is glad that someone powerful is on his side. Meanwhile, Jinkyung says that finding out the cause of demon attacks is their main quest. That night, they arrive at an inn for a meal. They check their map, and they plan to ride a boat in Jiria. Jinkyung wants to go with them, but he needs to prepare some things first. Maina offers to undo the summons, and Jinkyung disappears. People notice Maina and Benny. While chatting with a waiter, some men observe them. They go out, and Maina tries to buy food. Just then, she noticed her money was missing, and two men walked away laughing. Later, the two camps are outside, and Benny comments that Maina will be the cause of the country's demise. Meanwhile, Jinkyung returns to Earth. He hears his father shouting and banging on his door. As he tried to open it, he got pushed by the door, which was forcefully opened. His father shouts and asks what Jinkyung is doing. His father scolds Jinkyung about locking himself in his room without eating. They have been knocking for hours. That's why he is furious. Jinkyung's mother tells him to calm down and that she'll talk with Jinkyung. Jinkyung's father goes out to smoke and complains about having a son like Jinkyung. Jinkyung's mother is worried that he hasn't eaten for the past 2 days. Just then, she notices bread she doesn't recognize buying. Jinkyung claims he is doing something important and asks that you leave him alone. His parents are distressed, and Jinkyung complains about getting hurt in this world. Meanwhile, Maina and Benny have been traveling for 4 days on foot. Benny complains about not getting a carriage. Maina complains that Benny bought a fishing rod, but he can't even catch one fish. Maina grabs the fishing rod and immediately catches a fish. She complains about being a good farmer and fisherman. They cook the fish Maina caught. Just then, the whole area trembles and a demon passes by their camp. Benny panics and finds the fish they're cooking, but a woman steps on it. The woman notices them and asks what they are doing. Maina tells her that they are on their way to the port city. The woman tells them not to camp near the river to avoid demons. Just then, one of her men calls her Captain Aka and reports that the beast is coming back. She orders everyone to attack the demon. Maina tells Benny to take a look, and she sees Benny crying over the crushed raw fish. Later, the demon comes back and Aka pulls up an arrow. She fires the arrow and hits the horned demon's eye. The demon tumbles forward, but she pulls out her sword and slices the demon in half. Benny asks if it was magic, but Maina notices something about Aka's sword. Later that afternoon, Aka welcomes Maina and Benny to their camp. Aka claims that they exist to protect people. Benny asks Maina to make Aka and her team volunteer for their mission. Maina asks if she used magic earlier, but Aka explains that it was the dagger she used. Maina asks if it was the shuriken, and Aka asks why Maina knows alchemy. Aka explains that it only stores mana to create a magic blade, but it takes a day to recharge it. Aka's companion mentions that Aka can also kill demons with a normal blade. The two decide to tell Aka about their mission. They ask Aka to assist them in going to the north. They ask the two kids not to play around. Just then, Maina brings out the royal command order and asks them to assist the expedition to the north against the demon attacks. She orders on behalf of the king of Gorva. Aka recognizes the royal command seal. Meanwhile, Jinkyung locks himself in his room. He notices the A-tag shining, but nothing is happening. Back in the other world, Maina gets tied up to a pole while Aka is asking her why they are going up north. Maina answers that they need to find out why the demons are attacking, and Aka slaps her. Aka claims that she doesn't trust the foolish king. Maina wants to mention the king's real facade and the noble's corruption, but she can't put it into words. Aka tells her that she also went to the north before. She was tasked with delivering documents to the king, but the king's men ambushed them, and she lost her comrades in her left eye. She burns the royal order and realizes why her eye is hurting more than usual. Just then, one of her men reports that a huge demon is on its way to their camp. They see a colossal demon, and Aka remembers encountering it in the north. It is the Lord of the Wall and the Master of Gria. She wonders why Kaltovia has come to their location. Maina asks her to let her go. She claims to have defeated Gria, so she can defeat Kaltovia. Meanwhile, Jinkyung is now doing the daily licking of his favorite figurine. Just then, the Edda glows and Jinkyung disappears. Maina and Benny claim that Main really defeated Gria, but Aka can't believe them seeing as they are tied up right now. They tell them not to joke around. They ask Aka to cut their throats and leave. Just then, Aka got an idea. She gives them a chance. If she makes it back from fighting the demon, they die. If Aka dies fighting the demon, they live. However, Aka wants to leave something for Maina. She gouges out Maina's left eye. Maina screams and squirms in pain. Aka then leaves them. Seeing Maina in pain, Benny tries his best to get out of the ropes. He later helps Maina get out and suggests giving up. Benny suggests running away together, but Maina reminds him of Benny's question about living as livestock. She tells him that to gain freedom, you need to pay a price. Maina shouts that she is ashamed of being the summoner of Jinkyung. Benny suggests treating her first, but Maina summons Jinkyung first. A blue light falls from the night sky, and Jinkyung appears, licking a girl's skin. The girl slaps Jinkyung and calls Jinkyung a pervert. Jinkyung apologizes, but Emily complains that her body always smells like saliva. Jinkyung claims that's the smell of happiness and runs away. Jinkyung shouts Emily's name as she disappears on the horizon. Jinkyung laments about being hated by his favorite anime character. Benny gets his attention, and Jinkyung notices Maina crying in pain. Maina says it's fine and mentions the demon first, but Jinkyung worries. Maina apologizes for being useless and interfering with Jinkyung's life. Jinkyung calmly tells her not to call herself useless, because she is not. Maina then cries out loud. Jinkyung thought about how to heal her and peeled off the bandage on his feet. Jinkyung tells Maina to stay still, but seeing the hair sticking to it, she screams and panics. Then he holds her down, and the bandage lights up. Her eyes are now better, but for some reason, she hates it. Meanwhile, Kaltovia destroys the villages in his path. People watch as the giant demon strides on the way to their village. Eika's team tries to attack Kaltovia's foot, but it is useless. Eika plans to use her magic knife. She orders the rest to help the nearby villages evacuate. She then goes alone to attack Kaltovia. Her assistant realizes that Eika doesn't want the same thing to happen again in her life, where her comrades die first. Eika worries that her knife didn't recharge enough mana, but she still activates the knife's shellcon. A long blade of flame appears, and she shoots it at Kaltovia's foot. It hit, but it was useless. However, Kaltovia notices and looks down on her. Eika tries to attack again, but the mana dissipates. Kaltovia prepares to attack, and Eika accepts her bitter fate. Just as Kaltovia started swinging his sword, Jinkyung arrived looking for the demon. Jinkyung gets surprised to see an eye patch character and calls her super cool, while Kaltovia attacks behind him. Kaltovia strikes his sword on the ground, and Eika is confused about why she's still alive. She looks up and sees Jinkyung flying and then falling to the ground. She can't believe that a person received Kaltovia's attack. Maina and Benny arrive, and Eika is surprised to see her healed. Maina tells her to trust them first, but Benny claims that Jinkyung is already in a better place. Benny cries while thanking Jinkyung for his sacrifice. Maina claims his spirit won't die and will just return to its original world. Just then, Jinkyung wakes up and complains about how it hurts to receive the attack. Eika gets surprised, and Maina introduces Jinkyung as the one who defeated Gria. Maina proudly talks about Jinkyung, but he pinches her cheeks, exclaiming that he is hurt. Benny exclaims that Kaltovia is attacking again. Jinkyung tells everyone to get back and brings out an object from his pocket. Kaltovia attacks him, and Jinkyung is sent flying. Jinkyung fights back and turns on his laser pointer. The laser pierces through Kaltovia's body and reaches another planet, destroying it. Jinkyung realizes he was wounded and is impressed that Kaltovia managed to dodge the attack. He tries to look for a better item, but Kaltovia is already attacking him. He defends using his dad's lighter, which turned into a fire sword. With willpower, he manages to fend off Kaltovia's blade, and he counters using the fire sword. He slashes it forward, but Kaltovia fends off his fire sword. Kaltovia attacks again, but the lighter doesn't have fuel anymore. Jinkyung receives the attack, and he is sent flying through the mountains. Kaltovia randomly slashes the same area where Jinkyung flew. Eika and Benny shout that they need to get away, but Maina senses that there is something wrong. Jinkyung wakes up, and Maina finds him. He confesses that he has already used up all his items. Seeing that he won't die, he knows he has some power, but he can't bring it out. Jinkyung apologizes to Maina. Just then, Kaltovia prepares his lance, which can put the whole area on fire. Meanwhile, Jinkyung apologizes and claims that his real self is useless. Maina shouts and claims that Jinkyung is an amazing person. She then plans to prove that. She calls out Eika and asks for her shellcon. Eika claims they'll be dead and that she will never trust the king's puppets. Maina shouts that, just like their mercenary group, she is also trying to protect someone. Eika can't say no and throws her shellcon knife. Maina gives it to Jinkyung and claims that he can use the shellcon using the mana from his world. Eika shouts at them to stop having magic lessons, because Kaltovia has just taken out his lance and activated his magic. Maina tells Jinkyung to use incantation, concentration, and then mana. Using the shellcon, he needs to imagine using the mana of his world and use his own magic. Kaltovia attacks with his flame lance. Jinkyung grabs the shellcon knife while shouting that he also wanted a real fantasy weapon. He uses the knife to block Kaltovia's attack. He thrusts an attack forward, and Kaltovia's lance starts breaking apart. The attack pierces Kaltovia as well, causing the demon to explode. Jinkyung knows he is a mess in his world, but he can be someone in this fantasy world. The next day, Jinkyung wakes up from a stiff sleep. He goes outside and sees people gathering the dead. He thought fantasy worlds were fun based on the anime he watched. However, monster attacks or wars can cause people's deaths, and he also realizes that having no internet is indeed scary. Meanwhile, Eika apologizes to Maina. She can trust Maina, but not the king, because he might also be trying to take advantage of her. Maina also realized it, and that's why she wants to check the north. Later, Aka gives them money and apologizes for everything. Aka and her assistant also mention the bards, who are the main source of news regarding the king's bad reputation. Aka then gives the shuriken knife to Jinkyung and asks him to take care of Maina. However, he starts acting cool. They later go their separate ways. Afterward, Jinkyung gets mad that Aka was the one to hurt Maina. Maina asks Jinkyung to understand because Aka is just someone who tries to protect others. She further tells them that she realized a lot of things thanks to Aka, like making your own choices and what responsibility means. Meanwhile, Alira meets her father. Her father then discusses with another nobleman about Maina's party defeating Gria. The other nobleman then mentions a rumor from the bards that Kaltovia appeared and got destroyed. The two women and the other nobleman suggest doing something when Maina's party reaches the port city. In a forest, a bard troop discusses being hired to target someone. They are tasked with targeting Maina's party because they are dangerous according to their higher-ups, and the leader asks who is going to do it. Lua, the feminine-looking bard in the group, accepts the task and goes home. Lua's mother hits Lua for wasting her time singing nonsense. She compares Lua to their neighbors. The crying Lua shuts the door and runs away. Lua swears to succeed in the task and come back proudly. Meanwhile, Maina and Benny struggle to pass through the forest. Jinkyung doesn't feel tired and assumes that his body now understands how to use mana. Benny asks if Jinkyung has seen the sea. Jinkyung then finds out that the two teens haven't seen the sea yet. He starts to describe it, but he is actually only repeating what he has heard on TV and the internet. They then reach the sea, but Jinkyung is confused, seeing a different sea than he knows. Suddenly they hear a roar and assume that it is a demon. They ran in its direction. Meanwhile, Lua is being attacked by a demon. Lua lies down, regretting accepting the mission. Just then, Jinkyung arrives complaining at the demon for attacking a girl and leaps forward. Everyone looks at him, not reaching for the shuriken knife. Maina screams at him for putting it there. Jinkyung asks for a timeout, but the monster sends him flying with one hit. Lua wonders who that loser was. The demon roars and Lua runs away from it. Jinkyung recites his embarrassing incantations and slashes the demon in half, including the mountain from afar. The demon explodes and Lua recognizes them as the targets of the task. Jinkyung asks if the beautiful flower is fine. Lua claims that he is fine. Everyone falls silent for a while, and Lua asks if something is wrong. Jinkyung asks why Lua's voice is so deep, and Lua claims that it is normal for a guy. They fall into silence once again. Later they introduce each other, and Lua finds out that they are going to the port city. Lua offers to take them to the Bard's Hall so he can repay them for saving him. Maina is happy, but Jinkyung lets out a sad sigh. He asks Lua why his hair is long. Lua explains that his troop tells him to do so. Lua apologizes, but Jinkyung explains that in his world, who cares if they're a man or woman? They just need to taste good. The others react differently, and Lua concludes that Jinkyung is dangerous after all. They arrive at the Bard's Hall, but it was recently destroyed by a demon. Lua claims there's a basement, and Maina offers to help with cleaning. Benny tells Maina to look for a boat first or else they will travel by land. The three then leave and Lua brings out something. Lua is tasked with making the targets sleep, and people will come to finish the job. It is their chance to make real money. Lua wonders if the potion will work on the spirit. The leader then tells Lua something. Maina's party sees the destroyed village. They think Kaltovia is the cause, knowing that the demon is tall and can cross the waters. Maina claims there were no demon attacks from the waters because the port city is protected by the goddess of the sea, Aya. Jinkyung laughs and claims that there is no god. The church is scamming people by lying to them. They arrive at the docks and see the boats destroyed. They see a light and approach it. They see someone repairing an intact boat. The old man didn't respond to them, and someone appeared to tell them that the old man doesn't talk. Benny tells the man that they are looking for a boat. The man claims that the old man has fixed it a bit, but there is another problem. The sea has a low tide, and the boat can't get out. The man concludes that the goddess of the sea has forsaken them. Later, Maina's party returns to the Bard's Hall, and Lua welcomes them in the underground hall with a warm fire, bedding, and meals. Jinkyung disgustingly looks at Lua and tells him to cover himself. Lua apologizes and explains that it is his performance attire. Maina thanks Lua for the meal, and he walks away to get some drinks. As the party talks about their next plans, Lua pours the sleeping potion into their drinks. Lua comes and accidentally mentions potion instead of tea. He cries, knowing he failed. However, the three receive the drinks. Maina then asks Lua about the tides. Lua mentions a legend about Aya and the bards. Aya was originally from the demon side. When people learned she loved songs, bards gathered and created the most beautiful song in the world as a tribute to her. Aya gives them a blessing, making the tide high at night to protect people from demons and low during the day to help fishermen. Jinkyung tells them not to believe that. Lua exclaims that Aya selects the bard with the most beautiful voice. Jinkyung says it is not Lua, and Lua cried. Lua cries that he shared everything, but the three are not drinking their drinks yet. Just then, Jinkyung exclaims that he doesn't want to hear superstitions. Instead, he wants to. Lua worries that Jinkyung might have discovered the sleeping potion. However, Jinkyung gulps down the drink and tells Lua that he can't be easily fooled. He asks if the bards met the king in person to be able to talk badly about his reputation. Lua claims they risk their lives singing as bards and use the words of people near the king as lyrics. Jinkyung asks who they are, and Lua panickingly tells him that it is confidential. Jinkyung easily concludes that it was the noble's doing. Jinkyung claims he was turned into a trash because of the words of people he never met. He tells Lua to see the king first. Lua exclaims that they always have a trustworthy source, and it is their senior bards. Jinkyung laughs at his seniors, who can only get orders and decide if someone is trustworthy or not. Lua gets mad. Just then, Benny falls, and Jinkyung also sees Maina unconscious. Jinkyung looks at Lua, realizing something. He checks where his knife is and glares at Lua. Seeing that Jinkyung is not affected, Lua follows the words of his seniors to kill the summoner. Lua grabs a knife, and Jinkyung tries to stop him. However, Maina gets stabbed, and Jinkyung immediately disappears. Jinkyung returns crashing to his room and sees a light fading away. Lua gets nervous at what he just did and just sits in the corner, trembling. He remembers his leader's words that this is for the sake of forging a new world. Lua calms down as he realizes that this is the first step toward their goal. He then goes outside and lights up a signal lamp. A group of people notice it and feel pity that they can't see the strong spirit. The alchemist explains that it would be possible to research mana from other worlds. The ignorant mercenary just laughs, saying that they do the cleanup as always. Just then, a single raindrop falls, and the mute old man notices it. He thinks it was just nothing. They continued chatting about the disaster 40 years ago. The old man remembers a woman asking him to sing a song with his beautiful voice. Meanwhile, Lua meets the alchemist and mercenary. They came to collect Maina and Benny. The alchemist goes out first with Maina's body. The mercenary asks how much Lua got as an advance payment. He tells Lua to count again and surprisingly stabs him with a sword. Lua falls and screams, seeing his own blood. The mercenary asks Lua not to get mad because they also need to make things quiet. He also feels bad that La's troop tricked him. They give Lua 20 gold out of 200. He reassures Lua that they can talk again in the afterlife. Meanwhile, the alchemist can't believe that a small girl can summon an amazing spirit. He doesn't care anymore and plans to dump Maina's body in the water. He stabs her to make sure she is dead for good. Jinkyung panics and looks for bandages. He goes out of his room, surprising his parents. His father asks what is wrong. Jinkyung comes back to his room and thinks it is now pointless. He can't go back unless Maina summons him. He grabs the Adek and goes out. His father stops him. Jinkyung gets flustered in front of his parents. He remembers Maina's words about becoming mature by looking at his surroundings. Jinkyung stutters and finally tells them that he is sorry. He shouts his apologies and tells them that he needs to go somewhere. He turns his back on them and opens the door. He grits his teeth, and he is finally out of the house. His parents run to the balcony and see Jinkyung running somewhere. He doesn't know if it will still work or if he will get panic attacks. He arrives at a pharmacy and buys medicine. He bought what he needed and wonders what to do next. Just then, he noticed that he was in front of a lot of people. He gets dizzy and falls to his knees. He squeezes his chest and shouts to be summoned already. People check on him, but he tells them to leave him alone. People call him crazy and they call the police. Later, the police arrive, but the bystanders claim that Jinkyung suddenly disappeared. Moments ago, she was suffocated and looked down again. Just then, he realized there was something that scared him most. If Maina was dying right now. He slams his head on the ground, and people are contacting the police. He brings out the Adek and remembers that it is a link between him and Maina. He also remembers that magic needs things. He stands up and realizes that his life is already a mess, so who cares if it makes more things embarrassing? He starts chanting while people find him weird. Nevertheless, he continues even if he is called an 8th grader syndrome by a nearby otaku recording him. He shouts to open the dimensional gate, making everyone laugh and feel embarrassed for him. However, Jinkyung smiles and the 8 egg shines brightly. A bright pillar of light appears in the neighborhood, and a dimensional gate appears before Jinkyung. He enters it, and a broken 8 egg is left behind as he disappears on the streets. Jinkyung returns to the Bard's Hall and discovers Lua, who is severely wounded. Lua asks for forgiveness and asks to be saved. Lua tells him that Maina was brought to the coast. Jinkyung stands and turns his back. Lua cries as he asks for forgiveness. He shouts that he only did it for money. Jinkyung claims he doesn't like people doing anything for money and scolds Lua. Lua apologizes as he bleeds. Jinkyung is frustrated but remembers that Maina would help him regardless. Jinkyung runs toward the coast. Lua can't believe he is healed, and Jinkyung came back without his summoner. The myths and legends from the Bard songs never mention an amazing spirit like Jinkyung. Benny slowly gains consciousness as he tries to remember what happened. He discovers the mercenary is concerned about finishing their job. Seeing that Jinkyung is nowhere to be seen, he knows that they are in a dangerous situation. He tries to run away but discovers Maina's lifeless body beside him. He shouts and he gets discovered. He runs away and the mercenary chases Benny. The mercenary throws a knife and the panicked Benny falls. His body instinctively runs on 4. The mercenary shouts at him to run on 2 legs. Just then, he sees Jinkyung, and the mercenary panics at seeing him. He brings out his sword, Shulkin. It turns into a long mana blade and Jinkyung tells Benny to get down. Jinkyung activates his Shulkin knife and slashes the long mana sword, breaking it into pieces. Jinkyung knocks out the mercenary and realizes that Gore is not cool at all. Benny tells Jinkyung about Maina's location, and they go to the coast. They discover Maina, and Jinkyung uses his earth medicines on Maina. The alchemist is glad that he hid after sensing something. He can't believe that the spirit is back when the summoner is dead. He is anxious about what to do next and plans to blame the mercenary. He looks up and sees the mana from Jinkyung's world. He brings out something and lights up a signal light. A huge Shellcon approaches the alchemist's signal light. Meanwhile, Lua realizes that the current bard's songs are false. He wants to see the truth beyond the seas. Just then, he sees a huge Shellcon passing by and concludes that something is happening. On the coast, Maina's wounds are gone, but she is still unconscious. Jinkyung shouts in frustration. Jinkyung thinks there must be a way in this fantasy world. He asks Benny what happens after a person's death. Benny claims that their soul wanders around first until a god finds it. Just then, the huge Shellcon suddenly appears and lands nearby. The alchemist appears and claims he came back out of curiosity. Benny points him out as one of their attackers. Jinkyung tells him to take Maina away. Jinkyung asks why they are trying so hard to kill Maina. The alchemist gets mad at Jinkyung's glare and boring question. He explains that those who are sent to the north are always taken care of. The lords, alchemists, bards, and summoners have banded together while the king is conspiring with the wizards. Jinkyung then concludes that they have to band together to trap the king and make sure that the expeditions always fail. The alchemist gets confused. Jinkyung claims that he has seen for himself that the king helped them. He concludes that they are making the nation fall so they have a reason to kill the king, and that the next bard songs are about the lords saving the country from a useless king. The alchemist is surprised that Jinkyung has said nothing wrong. He brings out his shield weapon. Jinkyung declares that he is in a bad mood and activates his Shellcon knife. The alchemist attacks and Jinkyung tries to fight back. However, his shield deactivates, and he gets hit by the alchemist's attack. Meanwhile, Benny apologizes to the mute old man for intruding. The old man points upwards and they see a bright surge of mana. The alchemist laughs as he claims that his research is successful. Jinkyung recalls losing his strength for a while, and the alchemist's attack hurts. He tries to attack again, but his shield deactivates. The alchemist attacks again, making Jinkyung fall. Lua, who was watching the whole time, knows that there must be a reason. He then discovers the floating Shellcon and remembers that the enemy is an alchemist. He looks around and finds a backpack. Meanwhile, the alchemist ran out of mana and approached Jinkyung with his manaless sword. The alchemist kicks Jinkyung as he laughs at him. He stabs Jinkyung's hand, and he screams in pain. The alchemist then tells Jinkyung that he will chop him up and take him to his workshop. Just then, Lua shouts from the top of the cliff. The alchemist is surprised to see Lua alive. Lua tells Jinkyung that the glowing rocks around him are stealing his mana, and the shellkin above is storing mana from other worlds. The alchemist asks how Lua knew about it and sees his journal in Lua's hand. He tells him to put it down. Jinkyung stands and asks how much the shellkin can store. He then activates his mana and claims that he is the only one using his world's mana. He asks the alchemist if he can handle his world's mana. Jinkyung activates his mana, and the shellkins continue to absorb it. The whole place rumbles as Jinkyung continues letting out mana. The rocks absorb too much and send a huge pool of mana upwards. The shellkin above receives it, and it explodes. Rubble falls from above, and Jinkyung pants heavily. Lua shouts and tells him that the alchemist was trying to create a new life form with the other world's mana. Jinkyung looks up and sees something above. The monster moves violently, and Jinkyung screams about how experiments always create something creepy. The monster falls and looks for his friend, Kaltovia. It's an apology that he can't do something for this world. Jinkyung feels Kaltovia sounds familiar. Lua knew no one called Kaltovia a friend, and he left to read more of the alchemist's journal. Jinkyung tries to talk to the creature, but it just roars and attacks Jinkyung. Jinkyung dodges and attacks, but the creature easily dodges. It sends Jinkyung flying, and it follows up with more attacks. It continues attacking Jinkyung until it generates flames in its mouth. The creature then lets out a powerful fire breath. Jinkyung brings out his shellkin knife, but the creature dodges it. Jinkyung is annoyed at its agility. However, he realizes that the creature suddenly got stronger. He then thought of doing things for real instead of copying moves from an anime. He strengthens his body, and the creature leaps forward. He lets out a fire slash, but the creature dodges. Jinkyung goes missing from the creature's side, and he appears on its side. It attacks again with the fire breath, but Jinkyung dodges. Jinkyung increases his speed and is able to damage the creature. The creature gets mad, and Jinkyung tries to attack again. He slashes off the creature's limbs easily. The creature tries to breathe fire again, but Jinkyung attacks with a fiery thrust. The creature explodes. Later, Jinkyung and Lua catch up to Benny. He asks to bring out Maina. Maina gets laid on the ground as Lua apologizes. Jinkyung tells him to shut up because it is not over yet. Will Jinkyung be able to revive Maina? Comment below if you want the next part. See you in the next video.